Hey guys, welcome to Ameliorate Aviation. My name is Ben, and in this video, I want to share with you how my first solo experience in flight went. When I first took my solo flight back on March 23, 2021, at 39 hours, almost 3 years ago now, I personally had a few questions that needed to be answered. The first one was what to expect, and the second, how to prepare for your first solo. My first solo looked a little bit different than most. Before I share my experience, however, let me kind of break everything down. First of all, solos are relatively the same across the board. 3 takeoffs and landings in the traffic pattern to demonstrate you can safely operate the aircraft. It's pretty simple and straightforward since the entire flight is in the traffic pattern. Many times your flight instructor has a ground radio to monitor the comms and get in contact with you if you need help with anything, or in this case, getting back down. Most CFIs are not going to even consider sending you up if they do not feel 100% confident in your landings. So rest assured, if you've already been signed off by your CFI, they have complete trust in you. As far as I know, the FARs don't require you to come to a complete stop before your next takeoff on your first solo. However, you will be required to perform the 3 takeoffs and landings to a full stop on your extended cross-country solo of 150 nautical miles at 3 different airports. But don't worry about that quite yet, because you still have several smaller solo missions to master. Now, here is my story. It was a cool spring morning. My flight instructor and I had gone up just a couple minutes prior to get a feel for the winds and landing conditions that day. He signed me off and I climbed straight into the cockpit. Running through my checklist, I made sure to take my time and carefully go through all my procedures. The airport was Class Delta, which was really helpful in gaining my confidence with radio calls since it had a tower. Taxiing to and holding short of the runway, I ran through my before takeoff checklist. Cleared for takeoff, I rolled onto the runway and slowly pushed the throttle into full power. All my senses were heightened and my focus was completely on nailing my airspeeds. I did not want to be a classic example of what stalling out on takeoff would look like. Thankfully, climbing up to the traffic pattern altitude, I felt very calm and at home. It kind of surprised me how calm and present I felt in that moment. I knew if I could just stick that first landing, everything else would fall into place. Cleared for a touch and go, I came in a little fast and blew past my landing point, but all was fine. I had plenty of runway ahead of me, and so I put the flaps up, pushed the car bead in, and applied full power to do my second approach. However, this is when things got a little mixed up. There were several other planes in the pattern and a new one that had just approached. Tower instructed me while I was on my downwind leg about to turn base to make a right 270-degree turn and rejoin the downwind. Honestly, that was kind of an unusual request, and I had only ever seen that instruction once prior, nearly 2 weeks before, when I was actually with a different flight instructor. If I had not had prior experience with that, I may have not known what to do, but I did in that moment. I made my turn out and rejoined the downwind. After I had completed my third and final landing, a sense of pride and accomplishment followed me as I went to park the aircraft. A picture was taken and a 15-minute debrief with my flight instructor followed. Relieved and excited, we sat down to go over how everything went and felt. He told me he was sweating bullets when Tower had requested me to make that turn because that wasn't something we had prepared for. One of the things he noticed that I had failed to do was to tell Tower that I was a new pilot and taking my first solo flight. That might have made a difference, and Tower could have prioritized me and had other planes take on more complicated instructions. But he said that because I had been able to adjust, be flexible, and think clearly, that he had gained even more confidence in my abilities. Not a bad compliment to get. After the debrief, it was now time to keep the tradition alive. I had brought a separate white t-shirt, and my flight instructor grabbed a pair of scissors and cut an 8x8 inch square out of the back. He put a couple of pieces of key information on it, like his certification, the date, of course, and then, of course, my name. And on it in big letters was written "First Solo." So that was really just such an awesome experience, and I just remember it so clearly. This tradition first started way back in the early days of aviation, when airplanes didn't have radio headsets, and really the only way for a flight instructor to communicate and guide his student was by grabbing the back of his shirt tail. So by cutting the back of the shirt, this symbolizes that the student has progressed far enough in their training where they no longer need to rely on their flight instructor for immediate help in flight operations. It's a pretty cool tradition that continues to this day. So how do you prepare for your first solo? Well, you will need a few things. Of course, you're going to need your documents, like your logbook with the endorsement, your student pilot certificate, and of course the government issued photo ID in the plane with you during the flight. Before I took my first solo, we had to take a stage check. In fact, I actually took 2 stage checks, first quarter and then the second quarter. Once we passed both of those, we then move on to the next phase of training. We also had to take another written pre-solo test to examine our ground knowledge. I ended up having to take it twice, not because I failed, but because I got switched with different flight instructors. It was a little frustrating at the time because it was one more thing before I could solo, but the second time went way faster than the first time, as most of it was pretty much review. But that isn't required by the FAA. That is just something my flight school would require to make sure we were ready. So the best advice I can give you is to just calm your nerves. Take a really warm shower the day of, drink a cup of coffee, and just sit in a calm place for about 15 minutes before driving off to the airport. Remember to take your time with things. Be focused, alert, and calm. This is an exciting moment, a moment you've probably been dreaming of since you first started flight training, to fly an airplane completely by yourself. So just know your flight instructor is confident in you. They know you're ready for this big step. And so now it's just time to enjoy the experience. So let me know how your first solo flight went, or tell me when you plan on taking it in the comment section below. In advance, congratulations. I can't wait to hear about your experience. Until we see you in the next video, fly safe and take care.